I've been a fan of Vanillaware and their games for years now, so when I heard that they were taking on strategy RPGs again with Unicorn Overlord, I was naturally over the moon with excitement. The studio dabbled in strategy-ish games before, but this is the biggest title to date that they've done, and possibly their magnum opus. It's been over 10 years since they did a fantasy game, a genre that Vanillaware built their brand on. While us Westerners never got the chance to play Grand Knight's history, it's easy to say that Unicorn Overlord is not only its successor, but eclipses its forebears in every conceivable way. I went into Unicorn Overlord blind like I do any title that I'm excited for, and I'm astonished at how amazing this game is. Could this be the greatest strategy RPG ever made? Is this Vanillaware's magnum opus? Move over, Fire Emblem, there's a new king in town. Fans of strategy RPGs will be delighted with Unicorn Overlord, though at first I was a bit leery when I found out the game was somewhat of an auto-battler. I love to command, micromanage my soldiers, and fully min-max their abilities. Seeing battles run mostly out of my control was weird at first. Battles in Unicorn Overlord are not only fun, but rewarding and addicting. Once you let go of the anxiety of not being able to micromanage your troops, you then get addicted to the overall flow of the actual battles. Moving units feel effortless, and I found myself becoming obsessed with getting the perfect gear and lineup of the battalions to counter any foe. Each of your characters levels up, unlocks skills, and gets new gear, but you can also customize your fighters with their tactics. While it's an auto-battler, you get granular control over each character's AI. Want your healer to top off party members if they go below half HP? You could do that, and so much more. Lots of classes work in tandem, like light armor damage dealers and healers, as well as heavy knights and spellcasters that buff them up. Character placement, abilities, and tactics all go hand in hand to make Unicorn Overlord an incredibly rewarding strategy RPG. Yes, you can front-load each of your units so they either one-shot every enemy that comes your way, or they have enough wiggle room to whittle them down. Generally, once you learn each class and their differences, you can mow down enemies, but later on things do get mixed up a bit. You recruit characters through the main story, but you can also hire unnamed mercenaries, custom units that you can use to bolster your ranks. The majority of class types are obtainable for free via the story. However, flying units are a bit rarer. I had to recruit a bunch to make flying heavy squadrons. Most of your time in Unicorn Overlord will have you exploring its sprawling overworld, made up of 5 large countries and 2 large land masses. Even after a dozen hours, most players will barely have seen much of the central country, Cornea, and all of its various towns, resources, and battles. When you first make landfall and get to see the local region, that sense of adventure hits, and there's even a banger overworld theme to boot. The game then shows off the world map, and my jaw dropped at how massive it was compared to the starter zone. Battles take place in an instanced section of the overworld, cementing that feeling that you're truly fighting to reclaim land. I was pleasantly surprised when I discovered the game's rapport system, a relationship system that sees each character bonding and growing with each other. This actually gives characters with higher relationship buffs if they fight together. Now, this was a really cool way to make the dating sim elements of RPGs actually mean something other than the insufferable online shippers. Unicorn Overlord has a staggering amount of content, but it's not overwhelming like games with filler. There's just enough while progressing through the story where you always have stuff to do, but it's actually fun. It helps the game is gorgeous, and its overworld is chock full of details and secrets. A standard priced game at $60, it's honestly shocking to see a content-packed release with Unicorn Overlord, and no planned DLC, or worse, content cut from the main game to be sold as DLC. There's even a small and optional multiplayer minigame in Unicorn Overlord, with its combat-focused Coliseum. I found myself staying up way beyond my adult bedtime every night, desperate to play one more battle in Unicorn Overlord. Gameplay is paced out so well and maintains a high level of fun and rewarding feelings that make Unicorn Overlord a dangerously addicting strategy RPG that respects the player. Now for the story. From the very beginnings of Unicorn Overlord, the player is thrust into a world-encompassing conflict with a conspiring rebellion led by an evil commander. The protagonist, Alon, is a young prince and heir to the throne of Cornea. The forces of evil move fast, usurping the throne and forcing Alon to move into exile. The stakes are immediately set, and the storytelling in Unicorn Overlord is expertly paced alongside the countless battles you'll have to wage. Now a young man, Alon sets off to liberate the land, unite the people, and reclaim the throne that was stolen from his family. Unicorn Overlord has excellent writing and character development in that you not only get to see Alon come into his own as a commander, but also get lots from the wide cast of supporting characters. There's been a lot of discourse around the game's localization, handled by 8to4, and I want to dispel some misconceptions. There are textbook examples, while rare, of localizers inserting whole context to basic Japanese text. something I'm usually never happy with in localization. This can boil down to a character literally asking, "Why?" in Japanese, but the English expands this to a full sentence with context. Another debate pre-release was that dialogue was localized into Shakespearean English, a la Tactics Ogre, instead of direct to modern English. I think the script comes off well and obviously fits its medieval fantasy setting. My only nitpick is the voice cast, but more on that later. There were some examples of characters having their dialogue slightly changed, but these were also rare in the overall massive script. I think Unicorn Overlord's story and writing are some of the best I've seen in an RPG actually, let alone a strategy RPG. I'm convinced Unicorn Overlord is a game meant to be played in the full English localization with English voice acting, and that this is likely what Vanillaware wants the game to feel like in terms of its writing, characters, and world. The game is a medieval fantasy inspired by Western legends and motifs. Nearly every character you meet has their own backstory, motivations, and even relationships with other characters. As mentioned, this not only gives buffs with higher relationships, but there's more. You get to marry someone and make her your future queen. Anyone claiming the localization job for Unicorn Overlord was meant to cut the game down for censorious Westerners, I say this. Unicorn Overlord is a game with lots of Christian themes, and all of this is still in the English version. It's a love letter to Western fantasy, like Tolkien, sprinkled over a meaty strategy RPG base. The game even has a focus on powerful magical rings that can alter the course of history. There's an entire nation of god-worshipping angels and humans. You can only marry a woman. Self-sacrifice is deeply interwoven into the majority of the story alongside many other themes of redemption, devotion, justice, and a higher purpose beyond this mortal coil. The save screen is even set in a church. Does this sound like a game looking to pander to modernity? The game doesn't get preachy. It's an unadulterated fantasy story about a boy destined to reclaim the throne and unite the land. There's not much more than that, but the writing is solid and the main characters are very well written. Unicorn Overlord really is an epic fantasy RPG in the truest sense. I saw some comments that the villains in Unicorn Overlord are not properly motivated. This is Western fantasy filtered through a Japanese lens. The evil in Unicorn Overlord can only ruin and twist things made by good. Like in Tolkien's world, this world also has a Heavenly Father that created everything. The modern era has lazily resorted to endlessly morally gray archetypes, so it's refreshing to see a story of virtuous good fighting unabashed evil. Going back to marrying a girl, there's so many possibilities. Do you marry the big-boobed witch? Or perhaps the flat-chested dark elf tease? Or the giant-boobed dark elf warrior? Or maybe the absolutely stacked childhood friend that's also a priestess? There's also an 8-foot-tall female guts that can break you in half. Without spoiling anything, there was a slight tease from a certain character that there could be other regions or even continents in the world of Unicorn Overlord. I can only hope beyond hope that Vanillaware might return to the game's world, as they unfortunately ran out of funding while wrapping up its development. I haven't even talked about the graphics yet. While Unicorn Overlord isn't as exaggerated and wild as Dragon's Crown, George Kamitani and his team created a big cast of characters, all unique and great looking. As mentioned, the overworld is huge and stuffed with details and secrets, and it looks so damn good. There's a couple of characters, name characters mind you, not the mercs that are slight palette swaps, but the rest look brilliant. The game is 2D like Vanillaware's pedigree, but everything is so lifelike, from the character movements to the environment and of course all the abilities and spells. Kamitani and his team are really masters of their craft, and all of the 2D designs and animations burst with life, and in some cases bursting from really skimpy attire. As you upgrade your character's gear, it all gets visually swapped out in battle too. It's a really nice touch that I love seeing in games. Each cutscene has its own unique background with fully animated characters and environments, while all the characters have full lip syncing with fully voiced dialogue too. The full cutscenes with voice acting really shine, but even the smaller world map cutscenes work well. The soundtrack in Unicorn Overlord is simply breathtaking, and as gargantuan as the game. Every region has its own theme, each with a leitmotif that carries through its day and night themes as well as its battle themes. Everything has a theme, and everything is done so well by returning team Base Escape, led by Matsuhiro Kaneda. The dynamic between each region's overworld theme going from daytime version to its nighttime counterpart is so brilliant. The battle themes range from motivating to mind-bogglingly epic. Each and every piece in the soundtrack feels like it has a purpose, and every second has been well composed. Going back to the localization debate, I usually default to Japanese in games made by Japanese people so I can get the direct translation and voice acting by the Japanese cast. After a suggestion by our review hound Fingal, I tried the game's English version, and I was pleasantly surprised by not only the written script, but the English voice cast. There are some caveats with this though. While the English script and the voice cast are excellent and are well cast, since the game was given a Shakespearean flavor, I kind of wish the entire cast was British. This is a minor nitpick. The cast still sounds great, but it'll always sound silly to hear Americans reading off medieval prose. I loved every title Vanillaware has put out, and I went into Unicorn Overlord knowing I'd probably like it, but boy was I completely blown away this time. You don't get many games like this. Not only effortlessly fun, but overflowing with highly polished, masterfully planned content. Unicorn Overlord is a true gem. A genre-defining strategy RPG that should be lined up with the other greats released through time. I truly love Unicorn Overlord and now consider it to be one of my all-time favorite games. I only wish that Vanillaware didn't run out of money again because I'm dying to return to Feverith.